I received an email recently from Nick Brana. He's my Facebook friend, and he's the mover and shaker behind Movement for a People's Party. He's urging those of us on his subscription list to stop the $735 million arms sale to Israel. He's correctly pointing out that this is being perpetrated by Democrats, so that's one thing in his favor. But he's also giving credit to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Mark Pocan, Rashida Tlaib, and Bernie Sanders. He's telling us that they're putting grassroots pressure on Congress. Even though we all know it's too little, too late, we're still trying to say that they're on the right side of history. He's also trying to inspire a surging anti-war movement. He wants us to share a petition and make our demands known on social media to increase the pressure. But as I pointed out in the last episode of this show, it's not going to happen. Nothing's going to happen without a revolution or true power in the hands of the working class. Episode 615 of this show, the one that came out right before this one, correctly pointed out that there isn't anything like the pressure we could have put on in the 20s and 30s with the communist/socialist people we had then. The workers were united along Marxist-Leninist lines, and they had the memory, recent memory, 10 years prior, of a successful revolution in Russia. FDR's compromise between the capitalist class and the workers was forced on him by the workers. We don't have anything like that kind of force right now. Therefore, the efforts of Movement for a People's Party, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Mark Pocan, Rashida Tlaib, and Bernie Sanders are all merely performative. If there was any chance that they could actually put pressure on Israel, they would be stopped in their tracks. If there was any possibility that I could put pressure on Israel, I would be stopped in my tracks. The people in the military intelligence complex are not going to put up with other people trying to get in their way. Nick says, optimistically, that such shenanigans by the military intelligence complex will be met by a surging anti-war movement. Sharing our petition and demands on social media will increase the pressure, as I've told you, and something might actually get done. But they have to know that nothing's actually going to get done through the channels they're pursuing. I couldn't just launch into this article without all of that introduction, because otherwise you might think, hey, we could actually get something done here through Movement for a People's Party. On May 5th, the Biden administration notified Congress that it approved a $735 million weapons sale to Israel, giving lawmakers 15 days to review and potentially block the sale. News of the sale did not reach mainstream audiences until Monday, May 17th. May 5th was when the Biden administration notified Congress. May 17th is when we found out about it. Gee, I wonder why. That means that Biden didn't tell us what was going on, nor did Congress tell us what was going on. Bernie Sanders didn't tell us what was going on. Nick doesn't say this, but presumably Bernie knew about this on May 5th. Does that sound like controlled opposition? Does that smell like controlled opposition to you? On Monday, House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Gregory Meeks, Democrat from New York, told his fellow committee members that he was planning to send a letter asking to delay the deal so they could review it. The following day, Meeks said he was no longer planning to request a delay. I wonder what happened. Apparently someone splained a few things to Meeks. So I'm sure that what Nick proposes next is going to do a lot of good. We call on Chairman Gregory Meeks and President Biden to block the $735 million sale. Hey, I wonder if it was Biden's idea in the first place. I'm sure he'll block it then if it was. The United States already gives Israel $3.8 billion in military aid per year. Now, when Israel is engaged in war crimes and violating the human rights of Palestinians, is not the time to further grow Israel's military capabilities. When is the time, Nick? When should we be growing Israel's military capabilities? In fact, the bulk of the arms sale is for Boeing-made joint direct attack munitions that can turn so-called dumb bombs into precision-guided missiles, according to The Hill. So MPP is trying to rattle the cage of Chairman Gregory Meeks, which I'm sure is going to do a lot of good. It's obvious to me that what MPP is trying to do here is raise money on this. The email I received from Nick is proof of this. It says, please chip in $5 a month if you can. But the Movement for a People's Party, as I've said in previous episodes of this show, it's an empty vessel. It's a way to keep us corralled in the Democratic Party. If you wanted to see evidence that that's not the case, you would have seen them telling us with one voice not to support Joe Biden in the general election. You may remember that the key speakers for one of the conventions online, it was a Zoom meeting of the Movement for a People's Party, had leaders telling us to vote for Joe Biden. Or at least they told us that they planned to vote for Joe Biden. You may remember Dr. Cornel West telling us that. You may also remember their aversion to voting for Green Party candidates. This is the really stupid part. Grassroots pressure on Congress has built up quickly in just a couple of days. AOC, Mark Pocan, Rashida Tlaib, and Bernie Sanders have introduced resolutions to block the sale in the House and the Senate, but today is the last day to stop it from going through. Even if the U.S. does send Israel the weapons, and you can bet your bottom dollar it will, we can show the military-industrial complex that selling arms to countries that are abusing human rights will no longer go unchallenged. It will be met by a surging anti-war movement. Share our petition and demands on social media to increase the pressure. That should make the comfy wine moms feel a lot better about themselves. Even though nothing short of a true revolution will ever make a dent in Israel's atrocities. Nick goes on to say, the House Foreign Affairs Committee, that's a joke, has the ability to pressure the White House by acting to delay and block this unprecedented deal. Why is this an unprecedented deal, I wonder? Haven't we had lots of deals like this? Here's where you can see doublespeak at work. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer told reporters, I support the president in his efforts to work to bring the violence to an end. How is the president working to bring the violence to an end, I wonder? As Nick points out, a $735 million arms sale is no way to end violence. But it is a great way to put more money into the pockets of Boeing, Raytheon, Halliburton. That's what we want to do. That's what pays our politicians. Here's some more empty rhetoric. We also call on all members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee to do everything in their power to stop the ongoing assault on Gaza. Read and share our statement on the assault on Palestine here. And read it with a full and happy heart because you are a good liberal. The People's Party stands with Palestine, demands that Biden and the Democrats end all military aid to Israel. Well, Frederick Douglass did say that power concedes nothing without a demand, and you're demanding. But there are demands, and then there are demands. If you were actually willing to wield power, then you could make a demand. And the only power that's going to do anything is massive general strikes, protests with property damage, etc. Nothing short of true power is going to make any kind of a demand that anyone's going to listen to.
Total impunity. The Israeli government already knew that they could casually slaughter Palestinian children and innocent civilians while offering half-hearted cover stories about human shields and Hamas militants without the U.S. or American state media lifting a word in protest. They knew that the U.S. government, their weapons dealer and international enabler, would not care about the 10-month-old baby who was the sole survivor when the other 10 members of his family were killed. That happened at a refugee camp. That they wouldn't care about this neurologist, one of the only ones in all of Gaza who was killed along with 33 members of his extended family. That included 8 children. They wouldn't care about this traumatized little girl who's just 10 years old and already at a loss for how to cope with the routine tragedy that upends her life.
I'm always sick. I don't know. I can't do anything. Deal with all of this. What do you expect me to do? Fix it? I'm only 10. I can't even do anything anymore. I just want to be a doctor or anything to help my people, but I can't. I'm just a kid. I don't even know what to do. I get scared, but not really that much. I do anything for my people, but I don't know what to do. I'm just 10. I'm just 10. All of this, when I see, I literally cry every day, saying to myself, why do we deserve this? What did we do to this? My family said they just hate us. They just don't like us because we are Muslims. Why does Muslims act for you like that? You see all of the kids around me? They're just kids. Why wouldn't you just send a missile to them and kill them? It's not fair. It's not fair.
Now what, you may wonder, is the Biden administration doing?
But now Bibi and the Israeli army know they can also blatantly lie to the U.S. press, using them as pawns in their military operations and face zero repercussions. They know they can literally demolish the AP's bureau in Gaza and hear nothing but the weakest of protests in the most mealy-mouthed language from anyone with real power in the United States. Early Friday morning, you likely received a notification on your phone that Israel had launched a ground invasion of Gaza. According to the New York Times, that was the message that went out to journalists from the Israeli Defense Forces by text message in on-the-record confirmations from an IDF spokesperson, and it was even tweeted out by the IDF's official Twitter account in a message that remained up at the time of this writing, at least. But it turned out that was all a complete ruse. According to a celebratory Hebrew language press, the IDF had tricked journalists into reporting this invasion in order to lure Hamas militants into more vulnerable positions so that the Israeli attacks would be more deadly. According to the New York Times, Israel's Channel 12 news station ran a segment titled, "This is how the tunnels became death traps for terrorists in Gaza," which described the lies to foreign journalists as a planned ploy. Another Hebrew language news channel claimed that an entire new unit had been created to execute exactly these kinds of deceptions, called appropriately the General Staff Deception Unit. So just to make this clear, the IDF intentionally used the American press as accessories in their military campaign in order to increase the body count from their strikes.
So did the Biden administration not know what was going on here with this deception of the press? And did the press really not know what was going on here? Or were they willing pawns in this game? The politicians and the pundits are all working for the same oligarchs. They're all on the same team, and they're all in the business of deceiving and manipulating the narratives that we consume. You're not going to hear the truth in any mainstream format. But my wine mom friends don't believe anything unless Rachel Maddow tells them. I'm glad that you heard the voice of that Palestinian girl before I read to you some of the thoughts of Caitlin Johnstone on the subject. 15 thoughts on Palestine. Number 1, you don't get to drop an entire colony on top of an inhabited country, grind those inhabitants into the dirt for generations, and then claim self-defense every time they retaliate. That's not a thing. The U.S. centralized power alliance in general is a gargantuan, globe-spanning juggernaut that feeds on rivers of human blood, and every time its victims try to escape from its fangs, it shows up on the news sobbing that it is merely defending itself. Number 2, I'm building a new house. There were people living where I wanted to build it, so I just started building it on top of them. They tried to stop me, so I had to kill them for being terrorists. If you disagree with my actions, you're basically a Nazi. My house has a right to exist. Sound fair? Number 3, a nation is not a person. A nation is an abstract concept. It doesn't have a right to exist. It doesn't have a right to defend itself. People have the right to these things, and a nation is only legitimate insofar as it advances those rights for all people. Number 4, people who condemn Palestinian retaliations against their oppressors have no real answers for what Palestinians should do instead besides nothing and die. Number 5, a nation that cannot exist without nonstop warfare is not a real nation. It's an ongoing military operation that happens to have suburbs. Number 6, create a permanent ethnic underclass. Take everything from them, rob them of reasons to live, oppress them, abuse them, kill them, bomb the shit out of them, call on them to stop fighting you, say you just want peace. Number 7, let's all please get very clear on this. It's a tweet from Omar Badar. Number 1, status quo, occupation/apartheid is violence against Palestinians. Number 2, then Israel escalates through evictions, beatings, shootings. Number 3, then some Palestinians respond with violence. Number 4, then Israel responds with massacres. If you start reporting at number 3, you're misleading your audience. That's like the scuffle with your little brother and your mom says, "Who started it?" "He did!" But make no mistake, Israel started it. Number 8, Israel is losing control of the narrative because there are only so many viral videos of unconscionable brutality that can be dismissed with, "Actually, this is way more complicated than it looks." When one side's arguments consist of sharing raw video footage and the other side's arguments consist of saying, "Actually, this is more complicated than it looks," it should be obvious to everyone that the latter side is in the wrong. It's like the cheating spouse caught in the act saying, "This isn't what it looks like." Yeah, it is. All the information is right there. You're just managing the perception of that information. When I left an abusive relationship, I told people he raped me, he hit me, he psychologically and financially abused me, while he told people that it's actually quite complicated. In my experience, that's generally the case when one side defends abuses with, "It's complicated," from my ex to Israeli apartheid to John Bolton defending the Iraq invasion. This is what Michael Brooks says on Israel-Palestine is a complex issue.
And is supported?
So it's not a complex issue. That's the big thing. It's super simple. There's one group that has enormous power. It's the most powerful country in the Middle East. It's backed by the United States. It acts on another population of people with total impunity and is never held accountable for anything. So there's no symmetry in the relationship, period. And just as like a thought experiment, IDW people, if we know that if somehow a population of Jewish refugees ended up in West Bank and Gaza, and an Arabic government in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv had an open-air prison in Jewish Gaza, which they bombed with white phosphorus, they killed civilians indiscriminately, and they had no provisions for medicine. They had an embargo that blocked food, that the electricity wasn't running, that there was an over 48% unemployment rate, life expectancy and malnutrition statistics were horrifying. One of the major policymakers in this hypothetical Arabic Palestinian state said, we need to put those Jews on a diet. In the West Bank, there was another Jewish area where there was a little bit more autonomy, but there was regular Arabic settlements where they pulled up the Jewish farmers' foods. They terrorized them with rocks. The security forces broke children's bones, and they couldn't drive their own roads. We'd all have no problem understanding what that was. So there's nothing complex about it. The second part of your question, it's a pure asymmetry relationship. And the question is rights or not. So that's it. It's not complicated.
Boom. Number 9. Awareness is spreading of Israeli apartheid brutality for the same reason awareness is spreading of U.S. police brutality. The internet combined with smartphone cameras. Seeing is believing. Seeing brings change. That's why the powerful are working so hard to censor the internet. That's why they're working so hard to make sure I can't make any money with this channel. That's why they give me warnings and strikes. That's why their logarithms don't allow my content to get anywhere. That's why my own subscribers don't even receive notification. The powerful people don't want voices like mine to get anywhere. Number 10, impose an apartheid ethno-state which punishes Arabs for European crimes. Abuse them until they hate you. Cite their hatred as evidence that you need your apartheid ethno-state to protect you from hate. That is so brilliant. Number 11, Palestine is one of those precious few areas where there's an obvious clear-cut right side and wrong side, and it's possible to just take the right side and be objectively, unassailably correct. But because of decades of pro-Israel propaganda, most people still fuck it up. Number 12, I don't know who needs to hear this, but accusing someone of anti-Semitism for valid criticisms of a brutal apartheid regime is odious and disgusting, and is becoming increasingly recognized as such all around the world. Number 13, if social media and liberals had existed in the 15th through 19th centuries, there would have been frequent condemnations of violence on both sides in the genocidal settler colonialism of the Americas, Africa, and Australia. Social media and liberals. What a combination. Number 14, once you accept that religious texts are made up nonsense from ancient historical contexts that have no relevance to the present, Zionism just looks like one more instance of white people butchering yet another indigenous population in order to take their land. That's the romantic point of view, I guess. Zionism is a white supremacist ideology. It is white supremacist in the way it is weaponized against Arabs and Persians by Western Christian fundamentalists and Western war hawks. And it is white supremacist in the way it manifests in Israel itself. Case in point, here's a tweet by Rania Kalek. Israeli TV showing the live, brutal beating of a man by Jewish thugs in a working-class Israeli neighborhood near Jaffa. Disturbing images. Jerusalem Post reporting the victim is a Jew whom they mistook for an Arab.
הייתי מצד אחד אומר, זה נראה כמו איזשהו ניסיון פתטי של אבו מאזן בכל זאת לתת את ה...
תראו מה קורה בבת ים בזמן שאנחנו מדברים, מנפצים שמשות של מכוניות. דניאל אלעזר, אנחנו איתך, אם אתה שומע אותנו, אתה יכול לדבר.
אנחנו רואים כאן לינץ' בשידור חי דוריה.
יש מישהו בתוך הרכב הזה?
יש ככל הנראה מישהו. רגע, אנחנו מנסים לראות אם יש או שהוא נחלץ וברח, אבל אפשר לראות איך ההמון פה פשוט מכה בזה אחר זה את הרכב, מנפץ את השמשות. יש פה אנשים גם שסמויים על הקרקע.
אני לא חושבת שאנחנו חייבים להראות את זה בדיוק עכשיו בלי פילטר.
Number 15. A nation that can't exist without non-stop warfare is like a house that can't stand without non-stop construction work. If your house would collapse without construction teams working on it 24/7 forever, you'd either A, move, or B, come up with a different architectural design. But as we all know, this architectural design is designed to help a few people make a hell of a lot of money. And the comfy people just keep on supporting it. Or like Nick Brana, they make performative gestures. If anybody's really serious about stopping this shit, we're gonna have to get in the streets. But as Phil Oakes says in his song, "Love Me, I'm a Liberal," that's going a little bit too far.